So please give a warm welcome to my good friend Wyatt Woodsmall.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
How's it going, Wyatt? So one of the things that Wyatt and I were talking about, Wyatt teaches programs that he really doesn't think you can get much out of a program unless it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 days long. How many of those programs have you taught?
I've taught 36 20-day trainers trainings, and I teach 18-day coaching trainings and 18-day practitioner and master practitioner trainings.
So he's really into making people excellent, and and you can imagine he has a few things to say about getting really good at whatever it is you're doing. And you notice that I keep running over and talking to Marilyn and Wyatt and saying, what do you think? Give me a little bit of feedback. And they give me that one little thing to just help take it to the next level and communicate better. And we were talking last night, and Wyatt said, well, based on what I've heard here, the thing that I think would be most valuable to talk about would be this thing that Marilyn and he have developed called the Entre Code, where they have modeled entrepreneurs and found out what makes them excellent. And the thing that they discover, they discover stuff that no one would ever think of, but it's, as they say, the difference that makes a difference. So could you maybe talk a little bit about how you created the Entre Code and what it is?
Okay, great. So as Evan said, modeling is a process of capturing, encoding, replicating, and transferring expertise. There are obviously people that are better than other people at what they do. And it's not simply chance. If we can figure out how they do what they do, we can design ways to train other people to do that. So talent and skill can be captured and can be transferred. Now, it can't be just transferred to everybody, so that's part of the challenge. Pre-selection always buys more than training. So,
hang on. Pre-selection always buys more than training.
The belief you can train anybody to do anything is ridiculous. So obviously certain people don't have the heads, the hands, the heart in order to do it. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them. It means they simply can do other things. So we need to focus on what you can do.
Who has been focused on trying to change people and train them rather than pre-select them? A little too much. Okay, good. That right there, I'm not kidding. That one nugget, pre-selection, always more important than training, is worth 10 times the price of admission. Go ahead.
Now there's two kinds of training. Almost all training commercially available is based on someone's theory of what works. Now then, the type of training we do, which is a modeling-based training, is based on what actual successful performers actually do. So what we would do is come in and model the top performers in the organization, and then we would design ways and teach people to do it the way they do it. And rather than come in and try to impose our model on them. People come in and we walk in and people say, you're going to try to tell us what to do? And we're going to go, good God, no. We're not here to tell you what to do. We're here to find out what you do that you're not aware of, and then train other people, because you're all of the experts. We're experts on experts. Our expertise is discovering that, but our job then is to figure out how you do what you do and train people. So that's the basic idea behind the modeling process. Now, how did the entrepreneur thing come about? So what happened is in England, in the area called Yorkshire, which is in northern England, used to be the steel industry. And the steel industry basically went belly up in that part, and the economy tanked, and they had a huge amount of poverty. And actually, the European Union was pouring money into that area because it was one of the worst poverty areas in Europe. You normally wouldn't think money coming into the UK, that's not something you would think about. So there were some people in that area that were successful entrepreneurs. So somebody thought, well, gee, what would happen if we could develop other people that are entrepreneurs? These people have done it. Let's see what we could do to try to figure out how they did what they did and develop a way to identify entrepreneurs, to support them, promote them, develop them. So that's how the project came about. So Marilyn and I spent about 6 months, a week a month, going around interviewing, recording 50 successful entrepreneurs to try to figure out what makes an entrepreneur, how they do what they do, all sorts of things about them. And we came up with what we call the Entre Code, which is the distillation of our discoveries. And there's 6 parts to the Entre Code. that we call filters, traits, techniques, processes, values, and skills. So the thing I just want to talk a little bit about this morning, and then I want to give you a challenge, is the traits. So first, how many of you in here are entrepreneurs? Okay, see, right off the bat, that's very interesting, because the people we talked to that were entrepreneurs, in general, they didn't view themselves as entrepreneurs. That wasn't a title that they particularly wanted. They didn't walk around with business cards that said entrepreneurs. They didn't introduce themselves as entrepreneurs. They just thought of themselves as good business people. They didn't have a lot of time to think about it. Other people called them entrepreneurs, but they didn't call themselves. So what we discovered is there were real entrepreneurs and there were wannabe entrepreneurs. And the first thing
what are you trying to say about the group here, Wyatt?
I think that there's a mixture of both. So
what about me? That's all I care about.
Okay, you are definitely an entrepreneur.
I don't think of myself as one.
I know, and that's one of the reasons. Okay. So any case.
Noah, you need to come up here, I think. It's about time for you. Okay, I'm sorry.
So some of the characteristics then that we identified. And now, first thing, entrepreneurs, we found out, are only about 10% of the population. So you're a unique breed, those people that are entrepreneurs. And that we have instruments that we can use, test, and online instruments we can use to determine who has entrepreneurial talent and who doesn't. Now, as Evan said, you don't necessarily want to go out and hire entrepreneurs, but we'll find there's other things where entrepreneurs are critically important. So some of you understand the characteristics. One, entrepreneurs are driven. They have to succeed. And it's like there's a compulsion within them. They can't help it. Their just energy is all directed toward doing what they need to do. In a way, they're fanatics. They're fanatics about what they want to set out to do. Before I say that, let me back up a second. We found there were two kinds of entrepreneurs. What I call technological entrepreneurs, which were people usually associated with a university that had discovered some kind of technology and that they were rolling out that technology. They were only about 10 to 15% of the people that we work with. The other 85% are what I call commercial entrepreneurs. Commercial entrepreneurs, the standard format is they would spend 10 to 20 years in a business. So they knew the trade. And in that 10 to 20 years, people would come up to them and would say, we want this, we want this. Customers were asking for things and they weren't able to give it to them. In some cases, they'd go back to their company and they'd say, our customers want this. And the company would say, well, too bad, we're not going to provide it. And at a certain point, they said, well, if nobody's going to provide it, we're going to provide it. Because there was a need there, and they knew the need by knowing the industry. And then they would create goods or services to meet that need. That's the way that many, if not most, entrepreneurs emerge.
Just for a sec, does that sound familiar, that idea? Now, what you said earlier, that I want to ask just a distinction here. When you say that most entrepreneurs don't identify, you weren't just interviewing any entrepreneurs, you were interviewing highly successful business people.
Exactly.
So the entrepreneurs that he was modeling and that Marilyn was modeling were not just people that said, I'm an entrepreneur. These were people that were making a lot of money consistently and successfully. It's an important thing to note the difference. And I find it interesting that the ones that were making the money successfully were the ones that were listening to the customer and providing things that customers wanted that no one else would make.
Exactly. So, now also we found there are two kinds of entrepreneurs. There are what some of you are, which are basically entrepreneurs. You want to develop a business and you've got an exit strategy. And there are other people that are serial entrepreneurs. So once they develop one, and they get to sell that, or they're ready to move on to something else. They can never be happy unless they're out there building, developing, facing challenge, doing something. So they always have to be in action. Another thing is persistent. So one, in order to create a valued business from practically nothing, the world's going to tell you as an entrepreneur it's not going to work. You're going to run into resistance. Your friends are going to tell you it's not going to work. Everybody's going to tell you it's not going to work. So you've got to learn to put deaf ears, and you've got to stay focused and driven in order to achieve and accomplish. And so persistence is one of the most critical things, and that's one of the indicators. If at first you don't succeed, then keep going and going and going till you do succeed. And you've got to be willing to do whatever it takes. You've got to put all of your energy, all of your fortune, all of your attention, everything into it. You've got to be a risk taker. So you've got to be willing to take risk. You've got to be willing to gamble in order to try to get what you want to do. You've got to be focused. So Eben's talked a lot about focus. A lot of these characteristics are things that Eben has touched on in different ways in what we've been talking about so far. But one of my favorite quotes was from one of my favorite entrepreneurs we work with. His name was Hugh Facey, and he owned Sheffield Iron Works. So he was a man that basically made wire for fences. And he was one of the most focused entrepreneurs I've met. And he had a saying which became one of my favorite sayings: first things first, second things not at all. So first things first, second things not at all. It's all about prioritizing. Now then, so what he did is like any good entrepreneur, he would go out and talk to his customers. So he was out in a field where the farmer was stringing wire. And he asked the farmer, "Is there anything I can do for you?" And the farmer said, "You know, the funny thing about wire is it breaks. And you got to go around and you got to try to find where it breaks, and then you got to try to splice it. And that involves a lot of work." Now, how many of you in here have ever had to string fence, have ever had to splice wire, particularly barbed wire? Some of you have, and you know what that's like.
Raise your hand, Rex. Okay.
And particularly it's rusty frequently because it rusts, and you've got to wear heavy gloves. There's a problem of tetanus and everything else. So Hugh said to himself, "Gee, I'm an engineer. I ought to be able to figure out some way to solve this customer's problem." And he went back and he started thinking about it, and he said, if I wanted to take two pieces of wire and put them together quickly, easily, and cheaply, how would I do that? And he came up with a device he called the gripple. And what it was is you simply could take two pieces of broken wire, you could slide them in both ends of this, and because of cams in it, it would hold the wire in place. And with that one simple invention, then being a good entrepreneur, he immediately asked everybody in his engineering department to figure out every other possible way of doing it. And then he went and took out patents on all of those, none of which he intended to use, but to make sure somebody else couldn't copy what he did. And then he took the device, and now he makes a fortune from selling gripples all over the world to every farmer that's got a fence that needs mending. So he's the classic entrepreneur, driven to succeed, totally focused, totally where he's going and focused on it.
Can I make a distinction when you said risk taker?
Yes.
My personal tweak on that would be, road ahead, I'll take a lot of risk down here, and I'll take a lot of risk in here. But with this 60%, I will bite your hand if you try to mess with it. So I would say that there's a combination of, it's almost like you're treating your business and your opportunities like a portfolio, where you have certain investments that are your strong base, you have certain investments that might be a little bit higher risk, and then you have a few that you're using that you think might be the home run, but you're not going to risk very much on them. So, but you're willing to take those risks.
Okay, what I would say is that this is true, and that you are a very refined and sophisticated entrepreneur, which has allowed you to get to where you've gotten. But a lot of the people that are out there in the trenches that are starting up, I mean, once again, they've got to build a valued business starting from virtually nothing. The world is telling them that it's not going to work. Everybody is telling them it's not going to work. That is a risk. So once you get to a certain point, then certainly you need to run the business in all the ways that are sophisticated that you've talked about. But the guy out there in the trenches that's starting up, he's got to be willing to take a risk because, and in some cases, he's gambling his life, his future, his fortune, that it's going to succeed. He's got an idea and he's driven to make it work. And any idea that you're driven to make work, you're going to have to put in and do whatever it takes, put the time, the energy in order to get it to move forward. So we could go on and on about this, and but I really want to move into something else that I think in some ways is more important and where this goes. So where this goes is, one, we identified ways to identify people who are entrepreneurs. Second is we develop ways to coach entrepreneurs. We would go in and talk to these 50 people, and we could tell after the interviews where their business would plateau. Because being an entrepreneur is a two-edged sword. The things that made them successful up to a certain point became an Achilles heel that would prevent them from going any further. The great thing about what Evan's done is Evan's told you what all the Achilles heels are. He's been through them. He's discovered them. He's given you one of the most sophisticated models out there. And I've looked at virtually everything out there, and I've studied entrepreneurship and for over 10 years now, and know what's out there. And he's given you one of the most sophisticated models of how to deal with it. And a lot of entrepreneurs then are not at this level of sophistication. So one of the things, another characteristics of entrepreneurs is they're difference people. It's like when you go out to dinner, what are you doing? You're continually thinking about how you could do it better, how the restaurant could be better laid out, how the service could be better. How many of you, wherever you go, you're always in this mode of how could this be better? How could it be improved? You're into a difference mode. You're difference people. You're about 10% of the population. That's what makes you unique. That's what makes you entrepreneurs. But at the same time, when you're trying to create a stable business, if you're continually tampering with things, if you're continually changing things, as Evan just said, leave well enough alone. Don't mess with a stable system. And don't mess with what's producing your revenue. But one of the built-in things is entrepreneurs like to tinker. They like to change things. They like to continually be moving things around. And this creates problems. Second problem is they got to learn to let go. They got to learn to delegate. They need to put a team. Evan has done a brilliant job of putting together a team. The people who are up here, over the years, Marilyn and I have talked to Evan and at a distance in some cases, and he's always been telling us about the team people. Oh, I got this person, I got that person. And here we've been able to come here and experience them, and they're a phenomenal group of people. One of the biggest challenges entrepreneurs have is what we call letting go, backfilling, putting people in behind them, realizing what they're good at, and that frequently what they're not good at is management. And they need to get people that are good at that. So identifying talent. So there's all sorts of these things that are involved, and this here is a super seminar in how to really then become what we'll call a star entrepreneur and allow the systems and put things in place to allow them to grow. Now then.
By the way,
yes,
that's a key to note. Remember when I said the type E personality, the entrepreneur? If you find someone that is too high of that difference person, that's too innovative, that wants to come in and start changing things and tweaking things, and when you're talking to them, you got to recognize that, because they're going to come in and, you know, in a lot of cases, they're going to want to mess with things and not just get the job done. They really do need to kind of exist in their own world, so it's important to recognize that.
Okay, so I want to shift grounds a little. So far we've done a lot of chunking down, and Evan's done a magnificent job of that, filling in all the details at the greater and greater levels of details. But I want to chunk up now, the other direction. I want to look at the bigger picture. I want to look at where we need to be going, where the world needs to be going, and why entrepreneurs are so important. So the first thing is, once again, we can identify entrepreneurial talent. We can train entrepreneurs, we can coach entrepreneurs. One of the keys to being a successful entrepreneur is what we call spotting a superior opportunity. Spotting a superior opportunity. We have algorithms that we could use in order to generate superior opportunities. Now, there are a lot of people given the opportunity that could create and grow a powerful business, but they can't spot the opportunity. They're not difference people. They're not innovative. They don't have that innovative thinking. So one of the things that we could do is come up with Entrepreneurial Inc., where we come up with and generate a whole group of superior opportunities. Then we put together teams of people like Eben has identified and put together, and we put the structures and processes in place, and then we can put these people out there and let them go then grow the business and create the business. Now then, why is entrepreneurship so important? It has to do with what's called high-growth startups. High-growth startups are businesses that start up and continue to grow. They hire more and more people. They add more and more money to the economy. There's a direct correlation between gross national product and the number of high-growth startups in a country. And every community in every country wants high-growth startups. Now, what do we have in reality instead? Tragically, what we have is that most businesses, over 95% of all businesses that start up, cease trading within 3 years. Instead of having high growth startups, we've got what I call rapid decline start downs. They're on a glide path to oblivion, and it's only a matter of time. They're in the death spiral. They don't necessarily know it, and it's only a matter of time. And once again, then when businesses go belly up, it creates problems for the people involved. It creates problems for the economy. Every nation, every community wants high growth startups, but they don't know how to identify the people. They don't know how to create them. We have the technology that can allow us to begin to do those things. And if we can do the things, it will make a difference in the lives of community. It will make a difference in the lives of people that are employed in it. It's a case of getting the pieces of the puzzle and fitting them together. Now, the next thing is the corporate mess. In the corporate world, they don't talk about entrepreneurship. They talk about creativity and innovation. And tragically, there's a couple of things that are really starting statistics. One, 90% of all radical innovations in the 20th century came from businesses that hired less than 20 people. It's almost impossible for a large business to be innovative for a number of reasons. One, they come out of a power control culture, which Eben has said don't do, instead of an achievement culture. And Eben has given the perfect example of how to create and manage an achievement culture. So large businesses. Also, 90% of large corporate world, when you ask, is creativity and innovation important, or very important, and they say yes. And then if you ask them how successful are they at, 90% say no. So we not only need to have creativity and innovation, we need to have entrepreneurship, but we need to have entrepreneurial thinking in the corporate world. The corporate world is even a bigger problem. It's on a glide path to oblivion. If you look at the Fortune 500 companies 10 or 20 years ago and look at them today, you'll find there's a tremendous turnover, tremendous churning. So being big doesn't help you. In fact, frequently it's one of the biggest hindrances you can have. So we've got a mess out there. So why are entrepreneurs important? Entrepreneurs are important because they are the future of the economy. They are the people that can create high growth startups. They are the people that can be innovative. They are the people that can move things forward. Okay, the next thing, I want to talk a little bit about a challenge for you here at the end. So when you get involved in any kind of activity, you go through 3 stages. So first, we'll call it the work. The work is what you do. Entrepreneurship happens to be the work that you're engaged in. Now, in the first stage, what you're doing is you're doing it because what it can give you. So you've got an extrinsic motivation. Oh, I can get money out of this, I can get this. But as you get involved in it, the work takes on a life of its own. It becomes intrinsically motivated. You would be doing it whether you were making money out of it or not. You want to be making money, but that's not what's important. What's important is doing it, the challenge, the opportunity, the overcoming, the working. It becomes part of your life. And then you reach a certain stage then where at the end, you need to be able to serve the work. In order to serve the work, you've got to give back. It's said in the work that you can't move on till you leave someone in your place. So what Evans said earlier, that find one person who's a star, who's less fortunate than you and less advantaged, and mentor them. That's what the entrepreneur, that's the final stage, is giving back and moving on. But there's something beyond that. There's something beyond that. The world is a mess. We all know it. All we got to do is we got to look at the newspapers, we turn on the television, we've got war, we've got poverty, we've got disease, we've got conflict. And most of us just figure, hey, I got enough problems in my own life, there's nothing we can do about it. But there is something we can do about it. So first, there's 2 kinds of change, what we call first order change and second order change. First order change is if you've got a pendulum, it'll swing one way and it'll swing the other way. The politicians, the liberals and the conservatives, the pendulum swings back and forth, and problems never get solved. The argument goes on forever because they're both part right and part wrong. All perspectives are partial. They've got partial perspectives. And so they can argue and give good arguments for their side, and they're blind. What Eben then talked about, once again, the critically important thing of emotional estimation and seeing only validation. They only see what they need to see. There's a second kind of change. It's called second order change. It doesn't make sense in terms of the system. It comes from outside the system. It involves a total change of perspective. It involves looking at things in a different way. And entrepreneurs are people that can create and identify second order change. So what is possible and what do we need to do? First, we need to reform the educational system. Eventually, business is going to have to take control of education. What should the job of education be? Should be to prepare people for jobs, productive, creative jobs in the business world to support the economy. Does the education do that? Most of you that are business owners, when people come into your employment, one of the things you got to find is you've got to retrain them almost from scratch. So they wasted years in the educational process, and where did it get them? It didn't prepare them to earn a job. It didn't give them the right attitude. It didn't give them the right skills. Even more tragic, Daniel Goleman, in his book on emotional intelligence, exhaustively demonstrates that one of the single most important factors in success in virtually every area of life, and particularly in leadership at the top, is emotional intelligence. And there is no school in the world where people are trained in emotional intelligence, the thing that's going to be the single most important factor in success, and there's no training in it. So business needs to take control of the educational system. Now we can do even better than that. We've gone out and we've modeled stars in all sorts of fields. We've modeled how people learn quickly, rapidly, effectively, how they can change. And one of the people we modeled that Evan mentioned, Michelle Thomas, who could teach people to speak a language fluently, could teach people to speak a language proficiently in 3 days. What would happen if you had an educational system? If in the first 5 years of school, you learned to speak 5 different languages, to read and write and converse in those, so we could begin to break down the greatest barrier to communication, which is different languages with people throughout the world. And then we were able to accelerate what you learn. We were able to take the strategies of genius. We were able to take the stars. We were able to distill what they had and go in and train people to do that. We could create a race of geniuses, a creative people, people that are capable of second order thinking, people that are capable of really dealing with the problems we deal with. Now, my wife has created a foundation she calls the Children of Light and Wisdom. And our goal of this is to try to create global leaders, people that are capable of second order change, people that are stars that are ready to move forward and ready to do things. Okay. Now then, Steve Jobs, when he was trying to persuade John Sculley to come to work at Apple, went back and forth with John a number of times, and finally he asked him one question that changed his mind and caused John Sculley to leave one of the most profitable jobs in the world, president of Pepsi-Cola, to come and work with Steve Jobs. And what Jobs said is, John, what do you want to spend the rest of your life doing? Selling carbonated sugar water, or do you want to change the world? Now then, what do you want to spend the rest of your life doing? If you want to spend the rest of your life selling carbonated sugar water, that is fine, because people need it, and we can train you how to do it better and more efficiently and sell more of it than anybody else. But if you want to play the great game, if you want to play a bigger game, if you want to change the world, then we have the technology, we have the possibility, and only entrepreneurs are in a position to be able to do something. So what we need then, those of you that want to play the great game, that are ready to give back, that want to move on, that are interested in not just changing the business world, but are interested in changing the economy and changing the world, then let me know, let Marilyn know, let Evan know. There's several entry characteristics. One, you got to be a star. So you have to demonstrate that you've been able to get there. Second, you got to have time, energy, commitment, and resources to contribute to this process. It's interesting. One of my favorite science fiction writers was von Voigt. And he wrote two beautiful little books called The Players of Null A and The Pawns of Null A that were based on general semantics, which is a philosophy developed by Arthur Korzybski. And so in these books, he starts every chapter with a little paragraph that is kind of a phrase out of general semantics. And in one of the books, one of the last chapters begins with the following statement, and I'm paraphrasing it a little. And it says that the world is waiting for bold and imaginative young men and women to create a non-Aristotelian-oriented politico-economic society that can eliminate war, poverty, and disease. It can be categorically stated that no such society now exists. In order to do this, it will be necessary to take control of the world away from people who identify. And who are people who identify? They're the politicians. They're the people that fall into the two traps that Evan has told us about from the beginning, that get caught up in their own emotional estimation, that only see things from their own perspective, that see only validation, that wisdom comes from multiple perspectives, and they only see their path, and they don't see the greater path. They don't see the greater whole. They don't see the possibilities. So we need to take control of the world away from people who identify. We need to refocus things. And who are the only people that can do it? The only people that can do it are entrepreneurs, because they're the only one that have the talent. They're the only one that's got the persistence. They're the only one that's got the energy, and they're only ones that can carry through. So my last challenge to you is, do you want to spend the rest of your life selling carbonated sugar water? That's great. Then Eben has taught you, and we can teach you how to do it masterfully and be better at it than anybody else. But if you want to play the great game, if you want to change the world, then you've got the talent, you've got the ability, and if you don't do it, nobody can do it. And we've got the technology, we've got the possibilities, and what we need to synergize our energy together and make it happen. So that's what I have to say. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Wyatt.
Last, I want to thank Eben. I can't thank him enough. I've known him over the years. And over 10 years now, I've seen him grow, I've seen him evolve, and I'm just amazed being here, seeing what he's done, seeing the incredible sophistication of what he's put back together, and now the fact that he's willing to give it away. He's truly reached the step where he's ready to give back, where he's ready to leave other people in his place and move on. And most people are not ready to do that. And so you don't understand how fortunate you are, because there's a lot of models out there, and there are none that are the level of sophistication of what he's created. So we're all lucky to be here, and let's give the real star who put all this together the hand he deserves.
Whoa. I didn't know what he was going to say. That's a little bit of a surprise right there. Thank you very much. Let me guess, you're not a motivational speaker either.
No.
No, of course not. Wow. All that stuff he just said, what he said. That's what I've been trying to say for a few days here. Okay?